Okay, folks, how's everybody doing? Good. Greetings, everyone. Ani Bojo. I'm Jamie Monastersky. I'm the press secretary for the National Chief's Office. Welcome to our press conference. Today's speakers will include AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepinak, Ontario Regional Chief Abram Benedict, Grand Chief Joel Abram of the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians, Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler of Nishnawbe Aski Nation, Knowledge Keeper Dr. Gwen Point, and Minister Patty Hajdu of the Indigenous Services Canada. So what we're going to do is open up with a prayer by Knowledge Keeper Dr. Gwen Point. Each speaker is going to provide about 5 minutes, and then we're going to open the room up to for 15-20 minutes for media questions. So if the media can have one question and one follow-up, and we ask you to say your name and outlet, please. So let me start things off by welcoming you, and please welcome National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepinak.
Thank you. My friend Noah, nice to see you. We were together last night for dinner. Anine, Boujou, and thank you for joining us today for what is a historic and groundbreaking milestone for First Nations children and families. I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on Kahnawake territory and thank the Knowledge Keepers for opening us up in a good way. I would also, did we do a prayer? I think I would love to do a prayer first and foremost. You've done it? I would like you to do that first. I think this is too important to leave that out, and that has helped lead this to where it's at. So please join first.
T'i'italatal, National Chief, T'i'italatal, our Regional Chief, to our families, T'i'italatal, to all those that worked and put the time in, the effort in for this historic day. Creator, Chichel Siam, Shashkawit Equala, Little Bird Equala, T'i'italatal, Creator of all good things. Through this song, special blessing on the ATIS for the children and families, for the good work that was done on the children and families. Creator, special blessings on all those and their families that worked so hard for this day, for this moment. Creator, continue to walk with us, guide us, be with us, and continue to shine a light on all our First Nations, especially those children that have been impacted. And give thanks today, Creator, for we know that it's going to be a difference maker. Creator, through this song, special blessings on each one. This song came to our family when we were brought to our knees because of one of our children. And through this song, it took us where we needed to go to help us again stand up and be strong. Ya, 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 ya de ya na, ya de ya na, ya we ana, ya, 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 ya. Ya de ya na, ya de ya na, ya we ana, ya wera, ya wera we na, ya wera we ya, wea wea wea, ya we ana, ya wera. Ya wera wena, wea wea wea, ya we ana, ya wera, ya 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 ya, ya de ya na, ya de ya na, ya we ana, ya 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 ya. Ya de ya na, ya de ya na, ya we ana, ya wera, ya wera we ya wera wea, 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 ya wea na ya wera, ya wera wena, wea, 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 ya wea na ya wera, te ia talato, high chips, yeah.
Miigwech, thank you. It was so beautiful. I think that we have to start this off in a good way. And again, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered here today in Kahnawake territory, and Miigwech, Knowledge Keeper, for opening us up in a good way. You're always so graceful and full of love for our people, and we appreciate you, each and every one of us. We'd also like to thank and acknowledge Ontario Regional Chief Abram Benedict and Nishnawbe Aski Nation Grand Chief Fiddler, the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians Grand Chief Joel Abram, as well as the Honorable Patty Hajdu, who are here with us today. I want to thank the pastors and the elders again that have been with us. I know one of my pastors is here, Pastor Bruce. Thank you for being with me from many years ago, and every single day he's been praying for this, that this happens today, and I want to thank him for his continued strength, prayers, and love. I also want to thank, of course, Dr. Gwen Point for the opening, and I just have to say that groundbreaking. Let's have to take a moment. I'm glad that we have our chiefs here, and I'm glad that I went and told you before we tell the media. And I want to say that we are pleased to announce that we have secured a commitment from the Government of Canada to provide $47.8 billion in funding over 10 years for the necessary reforms outlined in the final settlement agreement. This is significantly above and beyond Canada's initial commitment of $19.8 billion that was committed several years ago. The funding will lead to improved supports for First Nations children and their families through fundamental reforms to the program. This agreement is on top of the more than $23 billion for compensation. I know that compensation is done out the door. We're thankful for that. That was approved last October in the final settlement agreement, to compensate hundreds and thousands of First Nations individuals and their parents or caregiving grandparents who were harmed by Canada's discriminatory policies through the First Nations Child and Family Services Program and narrow application of Jordan's Principle. At this moment, we want to thank First Nations leadership from across this country who have played a crucial role in getting us to this point. This is from the chiefs. They did this. They pulled it together. And from the very beginning, the Chiefs of Ontario, the Nishnawbe Aski Nation, and the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society have stood beside us as we push for meaningful reform together. Looking back over the past 7 months as National Chief, there's not been a day that we have stopped working, lobbying, pushing Cabinet, talking to the Prime Minister, working with Minister Hajdu. And I'm so proud of you. You've done compensation for our children, and now we're trying to change a really broken system. It's going to be hard. I know 10 years seems quick, and it will go by quick. But in 20 years from now, I hope that many of our families are back together again sooner than that. But at the same time, that we fix this system so that it quits hurting our families, our First Nations families. And you've helped us change a whole generation. And I'm so proud of you, and I lift you up in a good way.
Hear, hear.
For too many years, we have been fighting to fix a broken child welfare system in the courts. And because of our unity in this fight for justice, we reached a historic turning point last year with the largest compensation settlement in the history of this country. And this guy did that. So we'd like to thank the representative plaintiffs for their resilience through this process. They have been pillars of strength for the thousands of children and families who experience discrimination. Let's hold them up. Karen Osichoff, is she here? Yeah. Melissa Walterson, Ashley Bach, Noah Buffalo Jackson, my friend here, his mother, Carolyn Buffalo, his awesome dad, Richard Jackson, Xavier Mashoum, Jeremy Mawasagi, Jonathan Mawasagi, and Zach Trout. Chimigwech. Yeah. While we were successful in negotiating the largest settlement in Canadian history, there is still so much work to do. Over the past few weeks, we have secured a commitment from the Prime Minister for a formal apology in the House of Commons. We've received federal court approval of a distribution protocol, which will allow for compensation to start rolling out this year. And that takes us to this moment. The last couple of weeks have been extraordinary, and we want to recognize and thank the Prime Minister and Minister Hajdu for your leadership. While we are pleased with today's announcement, it is hard to think of this as a celebration because everything that has happened so far is so sad. There has been so much pain and hurt and harm caused by this racist child welfare policy in every one of our First Nations communities and our families. And I see Delilah from the Prime Minister's office. My special love to you through this as well. I know I've been bugging you and bugging you, but it's always in good faith. And to Katie Telford and others, yeah. There's been so much pain and hurt caused by this, and it's impossible for us to forget that. These policies robbed our nations of our most precious resource, our children, our kids. Since the beginning of the 60s scoop, First Nations children have faced discrimination in Canada's child welfare system due to long-standing discriminatory policies and attitudes towards First Nations people. We are moving towards prevention rather than apprehension. Prevention rather than apprehension. And at the end of the day, chiefs will decide that. But I know from, looking through this, working really hard on it, we encourage First Nations to take control back of our children, back to our homes, back to our communities, and people and provinces need to step out of the way and allow First Nations to be the leaders in this. Hear, hear. The agreement and the proposed measures will empower First Nations as sovereign rights holders to administer the Child and Family Services Program as they determine for themselves. While we believe this is a very, very fair deal for our people and our children, what our chiefs think matter more. That's why starting this month until mid-September, the AFN will host regional engagement sessions to discuss the details of this offer and hear your views and recommendations. Chiefs will expect your copy shortly, and from there we will host special Chiefs Assembly from September 17th, 18th, 19th in Winnipeg for chiefs to deliberate and vote on that offer, and chiefs will have the final say. And we go through, yeah, absolutely. And as we go through this important process together, it is important to constantly remind ourselves what this whole discussion is all about. It's about our children. It's about our future. It's about Canada's future. And it's about a common understanding that First Nations families and children are best positioned to take care of ourselves. Miigwech. Where's Jamie? Jamie? Yeah.
Where's he?
Okay, Jamie, if you can.
The big tall guy in the back. Sego, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to stand here on behalf of our region, on behalf of the AFN, to celebrate this momentous moment. Chiefs in Ontario have been a part of this process from the beginning. Within our region, we have worked hard alongside the AFN, alongside our executive in our region, to continue to move forward the priorities to ensure that all families, not only in our region, but all regions across Turtle Island, continue to receive the support, the acknowledgement that is due, but also to ensure that our communities are receiving the compensation and are receiving the supports in going forward. As we've heard the National Chief announce, we've come to a deal with Canada. And I do want to acknowledge all the hard work that has happened. I, for myself, have only become the Ontario Regional Chief in the last couple of weeks. And there has been a lot of work that has happened before me. There's been years of work that has happened. I do want to acknowledge the National Chief, the other chiefs, my two Grand Chiefs who are here as well, and the Minister, who has also committed hard to working over the last several months, over the last several years on this file. and our legal counsel as well. I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. This agreement will bring forward transformational change in child welfare across Turtle Island, which is long overdue. The prevention services that our communities need will now have sustainable, secure funding for 10 years. Post-majority is an important part of the child welfare system, and the important reform that is needed for all of our communities to continue to heal and ensure that the wrongdoings, the systemic gaps do not happen again, and our children are set on the right path. Capital is also a very important part of ensuring that we do not end up in the same spot again. And this agreement does bring capital to the forefront to ensure that our children, our families, are not in those situations again. BANREP funding is another important element, a part of this agreement that we are happy that the entire nation, Turtle Island, all communities will now have the ability to access BANREP services for the next 10 years. Least disruptive measures is another important component. These are components that we have worked hard to ensure is in this 10-year agreement to ensure that the reform that is going to happen in the next 10 years is meaningful and continues to support our families. What is also important in this, not only part of capital to ensure our services have the infrastructure, but there's also funding available for housing. If you do not have a safe home over your head, then it is very difficult to ensure that our families remain together, our families are supported, and are safe. There's also, we have worked very hard on the dispute resolution process in this agreement, which in my opinion is a fundamental change in how our relationship is with Canada. And I do want to acknowledge our negotiating team, the AFN, and everybody at the Chiefs of Ontario for working hard to ensure that that is included in here. Because it's important that over the term of this agreement, we ensure that if there are areas, shortcomings, that there is meaningful dialogue and mechanisms to support change going forward. Because reform is important, but it's important to ensure that our children are safe, our children have the supports that they need to ensure that they do not go back into systems, that the systems that they were in are continue to support them in revolutionary ways. I do want to say that today is very momentous, but it is, as the National Chief has said, it is now in the hands of our communities. It is in our communities across our region, across Turtle Island, will now begin the process of dialoguing with their leadership, dialoguing with their community to ensure that this deal that we have negotiated is the best and they are comfortable with it. I can tell you that as part of the negotiating team, we are comfortable with the agreement that we have seen. Otherwise, we have not put it forward. But it would not have been without the real support of the minister who is joining us here today. And I do want to acknowledge her for her hard work that she has put into this, because this is revolutionary. So on behalf of the Ontario region, I want to thank the National Chief as well for the hard work and dedication that she has put into this process, and all the chiefs that have stood behind her to support her in moving this revolutionary reform that is long overdue for our families across Turtle Island. So, Yawan.
Jamie? Where's Jamie?
Okay. Sorry about that, Regional Chief. Next, I'd like to call Grand Chief Joel Abram of the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians.
Sagoli sagwegi, the was like getting young gets, Otayoni, never get the Lord, Onya the Aga, never Joda. My Oneida name is Demaslage, and my from the Wolf Clan, from the Oneida Nation. Very glad to be here today. And I think we've sort of turned a page in terms of child welfare and handing the power back where it really belongs to the nations so they can take up that responsibility for their children. Bring back those children that are gone, that have been taken. I think we all recognize that the child welfare system sort of took over where the residential school system left off. So we need a lot of healing too to go along with that. And I think this agreement is a good step. So I think it's another corner in another way, in that we've seen everything from the Indian Act, residential schools, MMIWG, 60 Scoop, all these things. They all come from doctrines of superiority. And we know that those are based on papal bulls, which is based on racism from the 1400s, which did not see us as humans, not fully human anyway. So I'm glad that Canada has started to come to terms with the fact that we should not rely on these things that are entrenched in the legislation and policies towards First Nations people, and that we are humans, and we do have that authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Grand Chief. I'd like to call up Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler of Nishnawbe Aski Nation.
Miigwech Jamie, miigwech Gwen. Your beautiful words and songs and prayers bring us comfort and strength. Thank you for being here. I just want to acknowledge all of you that are in this room, including the leadership that's up here with me in the front and also throughout the room. Today's a great day for our children, our kids like Noah. I also thought about my own, I call her my big kid, even though she just turned 24, Lynette, or Jace as we call her now. Lives with Real Alcohol. And my wife Tisa and I were blessed when she came into our lives when she was just three months old. And I thought about her struggles, our struggles really as a family. And I'm sure similar to my friend Carolyn's family as well, what we have to go through and what we have to try to overcome to support our kids like Noah and Jace. And so that was sort of my morning reflection this morning when I woke up. I also just want to acknowledge our leadership from the Nishnawbe Aski Nation. Deputy Grand Chief Benedict is here also, and also members of the Chief's Committee on Children, Youth and Families, or some of them are here with us. Chief Sunny Batiste and Chief Chris Munoz is there somewhere. Unfortunately, Chris could not be in the room. He has some allergy issues, and also our incredible staff that are here with us today. Last night, around 8 o'clock, I instructed our very capable legal counsel, my friend Julian Faulkner, to put his initials on a document, signaling Nan's approval that we will indeed sign on to this historic agreement. And we know it's not the end, that there's still much work to be done, because it will not be, even though Nan is a party to this agreement, that it's not up to us as a corporate body to stamp this agreement with the sign of approval. It'll be up to our leadership. And we're trying to create as much space and time for them to do their own due diligence with their citizens, with their councils, with their tribal councils, with their agencies, and to ensure that they have the resources that they need to do this properly as we head into this special assembly that's going to be held in Winnipeg in September. I also reflected on when we made this decision back in 2016. I had just been elected as a Grand Chief of Nan shortly before, just when we made this decision, that the Nishnawbe Aski Nation would try to seek intervenor status. And even though our regional organization was already at the table, and also our national organization, AFN, was already there, we recognize that a lot of times in these bigger processes, the unique challenges that we have, because many of our communities are so remote, that they would probably get lost. And so we wanted to come to this process, to the table, to ensure that the unique challenges that many of our communities in the Nishnawbe Aski Nation currently face are addressed through this very important case. And I just want to make sure I capture what I also want to say, especially to the communities. I know many of our members are probably tuning in. That this agreement will provide remote First Nations and First Nation agencies with remoteness adjustment funding based on full implementation of remoteness quotient methodology, resulting in a national average adjustment of 30% and non-wide average adjustment of 101%. This will represent the first time ever that a First Nation cited evidence-based methodology, and we did this in partnership with others that were that were involved in this case, including Canada, for estimating the increased costs associated with remoteness has been applied to adjust funding for First Nations to account for these increased costs. Because a lot of times in the past, our communities have been severely shortchanged when it comes to not just federal programs, but also provincial funded programs. That the historic funding structures, when they try to adjust or factor in remoteness, they tack on 10% or maybe 12%. And we know that doesn't nearly cover what the true cost is of delivering a service or a program, whether it's child welfare, whether it's education or health or policing or capital in our communities. And so that's why we intervened. And that's why we will work hard with our communities to see full implementation of this agreement. That we'll work very closely with our communities to ensure that they have the tools, the resources that they need to do their own work. And so, in closing, I just want to express my thanks to so many people. The families, first of all, leaders like Ashley, Assembly of First Nations, National Chief Woodhouse, Chiefs of Ontario, our rookie regional chief, and my dear friend Patty. Thank you for your leadership and your support. And I am hopeful today as I stand here that things will get better for our children. That what they've been struggling with for so many years, and just in the last week in the Nan Territory, we still losing people to suicide. And the ongoing challenges that they face with mental health and addictions, and the families that are trying desperately to keep their children alive, that they need support also. And so, to me, this agreement represents a promise to those kids and families that they will get help, that they will get some relief, and that we owe it to children, our kids, like Noah and Jace and so many others, including those that are living in tents and Thunder Bay and Timmins and Dryden and across the country, that they too will get help. Amigos.
Thank you, Grand Chief. And finally, I'd like to ask representing Indigenous Services Canada, Minister Patty Hajdu.
Well, I had just got myself under control, and then Alvin spoke, and so now I'm emotional again. But I do want to, first of all, start by thanking the elder for sharing a song that she said came from a devastating loss in your family. And I think we all felt that emotion in the song. And I think that if you are a parent today in Canada listening to this press conference, I want you to reflect on what you worry about the most, what you care about the most, what keeps you up at night, how you would feel if you could not see your child again, the worry you would have if you didn't know where your child was, and how many children, as my dear friend Alvin said, are going to sleep tonight not knowing where they belong, whether or not anyone loves them, and who cares about them. And that is what this agreement's about today. It's an attempt to change all of that. It's an attempt to bring some peace to families and to communities and to First Nations peoples who have experienced the tool of colonialism through what I would say the most cruel policy, which is to separate families. Sometimes, and I think that the politeness of First Nations people is something that often brings me to tears. Sometimes I think we don't talk honestly about this. This didn't just happen. This was a tool that was used to destroy the strength of First Nations peoples so that people could not fight for their own rights to exist in a way that they had for since time immemorial. Devastating families is a tool that's used across the world as a way to undermine people's power. Because of course, how can you fight if you're so full of grief and loss? How do you get up? And yet people do. They do every day. And they work really hard for a brighter future. Today's agreement is about a change to all of that. It's about restoring, as so many of the speakers before me said, power and control to communities and families and grandparents so that no child ever again will grow up without being surrounded by love and culture and language, knowing who they are. It's also a day that Canada moves from compensating for harm to investing in prevention. Many people spoke about prevention today. What does that mean? It means that we can see an end to the days where families are ripped apart because they don't have a safe place to sleep, because they can't afford the food to feed their children, because they don't have the supports they need to be able to care for children with extra needs who will thrive surrounded by love and community. We end those discriminatory, systemically oppressive policies today with this agreement. I truly want to thank everyone who stuck with these negotiations over the last several months and years. But I have to start with a thank you for the Prime Minister of this country. Because in fact, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, when he was elected in 2015, said, we're going to start this hard work of reconciliation. I don't think that people understand how systemically woven into the fabrics of this country the resistance is to that work. How every department in the country is designed to exclude Indigenous voices and perspectives. I don't think he knew that when he was a candidate in 2014. He sure knows it now. And he has worked with his ministers and with colleagues across this government, including officials, many of whom are in this room today, to change that approach, to insist on an approach that brings Indigenous voices, First Nations voices into policy making, despite opposition from many others who would rather have a system where we don't have to work together. But I think the reason why he did that in 2015 and the reason why I'm still a politician, and I look at my dear friend Alvin, because I've had many calls with Alvin. I'm sure you've taken calls from me while you're sitting in the car. I think I remember one, where I just want to throw it all up in the air and say, this is too hard. But I think the reason why the Prime Minister pursued this and the reason why I'm still here is because this country can only succeed when First Nations people succeed. Our country can't reach its true potential while we're holding people back. And so today we turn the page on that. And I know that there will be many important conversations across this country, and chiefs and regions and communities will have an opportunity to review the agreement and to talk to their leaders, and that all of you will come back here in September and decide. And I hope that we are able to conclude that agreement at this time. Finally, I just want to say thank you to the families, and I'm looking at Ashley, who's from my own home community, who has shared a bit of her story, certainly not all of it. And there are so many people across this country and in this room who have had to fight so hard to not just survive, but to thrive. But who are lending their voices now on their own healing journey to be advocates for those who don't have a voice. And that's why I think those of us who enter politics for a sincere reason do it. Because there are too many people who still don't have a voice at the tables where decisions are made about their lives. And so I want to thank all of the families who, despite great opposition and despite great odds, came together to say, maybe I couldn't have prevented what happened to me, but I'm going to damn well make sure it doesn't happen to somebody else. So thank you, Miigwech, merci, for including me on this journey, and I am just so honored to be amongst all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We're going to open it up for questions now. So if the media would like to come to the microphone, give us your name and your outlet, and who you're directing your question to would be helpful. Let's start that. Microphone's right up here. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Alessia. Can you hear me?
Have we turned the microphone on?
Hi, Alessia Pasifimi with the Canadian Press. My question is for the National Chief and the Minister of Indigenous Services. National Chief, on Tuesday, you had told chiefs in Assembly that the regional chiefs have seen the agreement. Regional chiefs are saying that they haven't seen the agreement outside of Ontario. Who has seen it?
Yeah, it would be, we have our own private system, and I'm legals here. I'm sure they could answer that, but you can talk to them after.
But-
Stuart, yeah.
So regional chiefs haven't seen it, you can't say?
Well, there's a new, there's a draft agreement that's available now. Well, there's an agreement now today. There was wording changes, and so of course that goes back and forth, yeah. So everybody will see it today. All chiefs will see it today. Communities will see it today. It was just initialed last night by all legal.
And a question for the Minister of Indigenous Services. As I'm sure you've seen, chiefs outside of Ontario has raised a lot of concerns about the way that this process went. They were feeling left out of the negotiations, that their voices weren't being heard, and that they were being given an agreement that they had no control over. I know you're saying that there is opportunities for them to make recommendations when they see it and do those consultations. How open is your government to actually going back to the negotiation table, though, if they're saying we want parts of this changed?
Well, first of all, I would say that this engagement period coming up over the next 2 months is going to be critically important. This was a legal agreement with litigants, and so Canada had a responsibility to work with the litigants to come up with an agreement over a dispute, ultimately. But now, as the National Chief and other regional chiefs have shared, there is an important component of going out to community and regions to make sure that people understand what's in the agreement. I understand that all regions will receive copies of the agreement in due course very soon. I think today is the timeline. And they will have an ability to read for themselves what's within that agreement, and I'm certain those conversations will unfold. And then ultimately it will be chiefs that decide whether they accept this agreement or not, and we'll take it a step at a time.
Thank you, Alicia. Anybody else?
Sorry, at the back of the room here. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. My questions are directed to the same people, Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu, National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepinak. I'm wondering if there is a change in government next year, what will happen to this money? How secure is it?
This will be a fiscal commitment that the next government, in theory, will not be able to cut, although I do understand that the opposition leader, the Conservative Party, is not making any commitments to First Nations people, from what I understand of his remarks. And so I would say that we'll do everything we can to lock this in. It will be in the fiscal frame, so there will be a commitment to First Nations. But this is not the only program or service that First Nations rely on in partnership with the federal government. Let me just remind people that as a country we have treaties and we have agreements with First Nations, and what would be great to see in the future under any government, ours or otherwise, is that we don't need litigation to live up to those obligations. And what I heard from the leader of the opposition and the remarks I've seen is that he's willing to return to a time of litigation, probably over many aspects of community life, and that's just not fair.
What do you mean by you will be able to solidify this money? Will it be in the federal budget? And I'm also wondering why you're making this announcement the very day that the Conservative leader appears for the first time at the AFN. Is that not political?
I was on vacation. I came in this morning on the 5 o'clock flight because the parties had a deal. In fact, I was texting my dear friend Alvin last night saying I'm not coming till it's signed because, in fact, my son's in from out of town. So I didn't choose this specific date. In fact, this is when the deal concluded. You can see that, in fact, a lot of work is happening here at this General Assembly. And so that's what service is. It's actually about working on the timelines of Indigenous people and First Nations people.
But a lot of chiefs here say they haven't seen the offer and you were on vacation while they were confused. How do you explain that to them?
Well, in fact, obviously officials are on the ground. There's negotiators, there's lawyers in the room.
They wanted to see you, Minister.
And here I am.
Yeah.
It's a great day. Thank you.
Okay, we got one more question.
Yeah, sorry, this is a question actually about the Winnipeg murder trial that the verdict has came in during this press conference. I know it's a case that's been followed closely by First Nations communities. So Jeremy Skibicki has been found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. A judge rejected his plea of not criminally responsible. And just seeking reaction from anyone who wants to respond to that verdict.
My sincere condolences to those women and their families. They didn't have to go like that, and it's such a slap in the face when people are let off the hook. It's happened my entire life. I've seen it over and over and over again. I'm not even surprised. It's so disheartening. And we have to change things in this country, and we can't just let people off scotch-free and to go and have some fancy meal somewhere and day in, day out and be taken care of after what they had done to many of our women. There's so much work to do, and I know that we just went through the 5th anniversary. I thought that this country would be reading that on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I encourage all Canadians to read that report. All judges, perhaps you could read that report. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. If there's no more questions, miigwech. And for journalists, Nishnawbe Aski Nation Communications, Chiefs of Ontario Communications, and Assembly of First Nations Communication will be available out here for further questions or setting up different interviews. Thank you very much.
Thank you.